Hello, everybody. We are back. Hope you guys had some time to do some tests yesterday. Let's get back to this. We have a lot of work to do. Let's see. So, okay, so that's my screen right there. Let me just make sure that everything is good. All right. Oh, it's interesting. I'm watching myself in there, and it shows a mirror. That's kind of interesting to see everything mirrored. Okay, so let's get this going. What do I have here that I had to show today? Basically this. Let's see. First thing I'm going to show you guys is this link here. You're probably familiar. It's in the welcome letter of our class. It's this. Let's see, this third one here. So this one here says ResearchGate, right? .net publication, blah blah blah. So you have the link in there if you want to check it out. If you go to your dashboard, and then the other one is this microgeometry papers on microskin detail. So I have this one open. Just gonna open this one as well. I'm gonna press Control and then click on it. So it opens and I do tab in here. And so yesterday what we did, we actually sculpted, you know, I was sculpting the pores, right? I did some more work, as you can tell. Using the same stuff, you know, the same cheat I used yesterday, which is like using that stamp and then filling the in-betweens, right? So we got like those little circles. There's another one in there. I have to fill up this area here. And you see like everything is the same, right? So there's not a lot of interesting detail because everything is pretty much like even, and there's no variation of type of the skin or anything. Everything is a single thing. But I wanted to have a lot of stuff covered so I can actually keep working more on it today, especially considering you're gonna have to do some more wrinkles today, like especially in this area around the eyes. So we're gonna be looking into ways of adding variation to this by observing those references I just pointed, plus this one here, this one, the PDF that I pointed, right, the researchgate.net. This one is interesting because if you click in any of those, you can see like the different types of wrinkles in different areas and what they are, what the common ones are. You know, it's like among different people, right? So they have the name for those lines, periorbital lines. You know, it's like those ones that go across here, right? And then you're gonna have other ones around like the forehead, same thing. You know, it's like the expression lines in there. And then it's also cool that we can actually observe the, if I just do this, let's see, zoom in here. Oh, it doesn't go very far. I mean, like it's not super high resolution, but we can have an idea. Just by looking at the reflection in here, the specular, you can get a glimpse of like the pores. You can see very clearly around the forehead in here, right? And then the forehead is an interesting thing because you're gonna get like wrinkles coming from all kinds of directions, right? You have muscles pulling the expression, you know, it's like you have like those wrinkles in the forehead, right? Because everything is being pulled up when you raise your eyebrows, for example. And then you have everything kind of like constrained against this other direction. That's basically like when you have like a, you know, it's like you make an angry face, everything gets constrained and compressed right in the middle. So you ended up like getting some kind of like almost like a cross hatching kind of pattern. So you're gonna have like some micro wrinkles forming horizontally and other micro wrinkles forming vertically as well. So we're gonna have to deal with those ones. Same with this area here around the eyes, right? You can see like you get those little lines crossing, like I said before, you know, it's like they cross and they connect around here. As you get older, this gets more and more saggy, and then you end up like with a web that kind of like hangs from the middle all around there. But you can see like the direction of those little wrinkles, you know, it's like coming from that direction in there. And then again, like you're gonna get stuff from multiple directions because you have like a lot of movement happening. You know, it's like when you have like a squint, you're gonna have like a kind of like a scissoring happening right in the middle, you know, below the eye here. So you're gonna have like wrinkles coming from different directions. Let's look at the other example that has like better resolution. But this one is cool because it shows like some of the common wrinkles that are gonna appear like in different places, you know, because people like move their faces differently, right? So sometimes you get them like very asymmetrically. Sometimes like one shows more than the other one. I mean, like my face, when I look at it, is very asymmetrical. When I smile, my smile is very, very asymmetrical. So the wrinkles, everything nasolabial is everything more enhanced in one side than the other one. So that's going to happen with all these people. Then you have like wrinkles like the sides of the face in here in different ages, which is really cool to observe as well. So that thing that we were talking about yesterday, you know, is like you start with a very visible structure of the pores in this face here. And then as you get like more age in the skin, right? Like they kind of like the pores start lifting, and then they give room for more and more wrinkles all of a sudden. And then it gets like paper thin, and then all of a sudden you start like mixing and becoming this weird brain structures, right? That we talked about yesterday. So like in the case of my character in there, I think I'm gonna be going something that's gonna be kind of like in between, not the youngest one, right? But something probably around here and here. That's gonna be kind of like that. And especially like I have to consider the fact that my character probably stay like in the sun for a long time, right? So the skin has to be a little bit more burnt and suntan. And also I think like the amount of dust and all this stuff collecting, it's almost like the subsurface scatter is going to have to be a little bit smaller, you know. I'm gonna start with subsurface scatter like a normal one, and then I'm gonna have to find ways to bring it to a more like a leathery kind of quality to it, right? So this is a cool reference for you guys. You can take a look, and then obviously you're gonna refer to this one, right? That's the website we are looking the most. And then I got this guy here, Joe, because he has like although he has all this beard in here, I think his age, the quality of the skin and all that stuff, it might have like to do a little bit more of the with the guy I'm sculpting right now. I could not find like there's not a lot of ethnicity differences in here. Most of those guys are just like they're white dudes and girls. But I think this is going to be a good reference for the structure itself, right? So obviously I'm going to try to keep mine a little bit more defined when it comes to the pores themselves, but that's pretty cool. I mean, like we're going to be talking about the other brushes to create like some other effects in the skin today, including the, you know, it's like the how we call like the blackheads, right? Like I have a little brush just to create blackheads. And then all the variations you're going to be adding, you know, it's like, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to be mixing the wrinkles with the pores when it gets around this area here. You can tell there's a little bit of the pores still remaining in there, right? Around here, you can see a few of them. But then when you get to this area here, this should be mostly wrinkles. You should not see like pores in this area here, right? Same is going to be around here. And then the pores is going to start like showing up again very visibly around this area here, right? And then here. And you're going to have those micro lines in here that go across as well. We're going to be talking about them. And in mostly like doing sculpting around this area to recreate something like this, you know. You can see the direction I was talking about coming from all directions, right? Get those guys coming this way. And then they're going to cross around here. And those ones go the opposite direction. And then you're going to get the main wrinkles in here. You're going to try to sculpt them kind of like breaking it up, like instead of like having those very simplistic like straight lines, you're going to actually do what we see here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, it's like just breaking things up to make it more natural. And then we can try to recreate some of those structures as well, you know. It's like there's a lot to observe in the skin when you start painting it later on. We have like all those little red dots that they add a lot of realism, like micro veins, like tiny ones like that, right? You have like, you know, pimples, things like that. A lot that we can add to the skin color to, you know, to create something that looks more realistic. So yeah, I'm gonna keep this one in the other screen in here as a reference, and then I'm gonna jump right back to this guy. And oh, another thing that I did today was actually, so I have that scene, right, with the guy in there. And what I did, I actually exported from let's see. So first off, so that's basically like what we have from yesterday, right? So I have like the shaders for this for the eyes that we are not going to be talking just yet. They're just there, right? Because when we are putting like the size of the eyeballs and everything in place, I just brought everything together. But we're not going to be talking about the shaders just yet. We're going to be concentrating on the skin itself. So the first thing you're going to do here, I'm going to clean up whatever is not being used. So if you're not familiar with Maya that much, you can just come to edit and just say like delete unused nodes. So that means like anything that's orphan, anything that's not connected to an object, right? A texture that's plugged or something is going to go away. So I'm going to delete the unused stuff. So now it's clean. And you can tell I have just like some shaders here, the carunculate stuff, like corner irises. I have the skin itself, the one we built during the class, pupils and tear lines. But I'm gonna bring up the two different skins. One is gonna be from Stan Winston, and the other one is gonna be from my wife. The difference between them is that the Stan Winston one, I think what I have plugged as a macro displacement is just like a tile texture, right? But although I like it, it's like it bothers me that you can see the tile if you remove all the coloring and everything. So that's why we started using, based on what Jason Hill told me, it's like one of my students, and he said like I'm using this this texture here that's actually it's like it's basically like seamless, right? Because it's kind of like it's a fractal, right? Just like so it's easier to just like control it with just some numbers. It's just a matter of finding the scale of it, and then it should work really well. So we tested it and it worked really well. So we kind of replaced that tile that I used to use for this other texture, right? So let's bring both skin textures in here, skin shaders, and see the difference between them. So what I can do here under Hypershade, I'm gonna just file, import, and let's just get like the first gonna be the Stan Winston one, and import it. So Stan skin is right there. And then the second one's gonna be to Jess skin. So now I have Stan and then Jess. I'm gonna select both and I'm gonna just do the graph input and output. So they're both like, both right here. So let's start with the Jess one and let's see what's the node that we're gonna be plugging actually to create the micro displacement, right? Or macro displacement. In this case, it's going to be like a macro bump actually is going to be applied on top of things. So this is the node we're going to be using here. It's called AI noise, right? And then to find it, if you go to Arnold and you go to utility here, you can see, let's see, is it under utility? Let me see if it's here or under shader. Let's see, AI color. I thought it was at the top. It's been a while, but let's see. It's here somewhere. Shader, AI. Where is it? Under shader. Texture. Oh, it's under texture. Sorry. So like this one is actually the cell noise. That's the one you're going to be using. There's the AI noise that's right there. And then there's the AI cell noise. Let me just take a look if this is the one we're using. Because I think we switched to the AI cell noise at some point. I just want to check the scale of this one. Yeah, we can try.
In the video recording, you were showing the AI cell noise. I think Jason Hill had showed it to you or something.
Yeah, it's the cell noise, right? It's just a matter of like finding the scale, the correct scale for it. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna remove everything, and then I'm gonna just plug this one here, because if you look at this one, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, this one is also noise that I'm using here for Stan. And I think this is probably like later on, because I remember like having just a regular texture that was plugged in there for Stan. But let's use the cell noise because it has a very specific setting here, which is like it has those patterns, and the one we're using is actually the alligator one. This is actually works very, very well. So let's try that. Let's plug like a generic shader so we can actually see what we are doing here. I'm gonna hide those eyes. I'm gonna hide everything there. Okay, hide this one. And then let's plug just like a generic shader in here. Let's go to my Arnold. And the one I'm gonna get is just the regular. Let's go to shader. And it's gonna be the standard. AI, man, my eyes, I cannot see more. Okay, AI standard surface, this one. So this one is gonna be the generic shader. I'm gonna just plug straight away. I'm gonna click, right click, assign material to viewport selection. So now this one is pretty much like a blank shader, right? I'm gonna reduce the specular. I don't wanna have a lot of it. And I'm gonna increase the roughness a little bit, like that. And then now if you render it, let me just make sure that I don't have any under like the preferences in here in the object. I'm gonna make sure that I turn off what we turned on yesterday, which was the subdivisions, right? So I'm just gonna keep the subdivision at none in here. And also, you see like everything is faceted in there. Obviously, it's not gonna show faceted when you render because it's subdividing. But if you're gonna if you wanna remove that, you can also do that. You can click the model itself. You can go to mesh display, and then just press like soften edge. That should be, you know, make it smooth again. And then let's do like a quick render just to see that we don't have anything. Oh, this one, by the way, I was testing just like plugging the Stan Winston skin shader straight away in this guy here to see how it would turn out. And actually, you know, for the most part, obviously it's very distorted and everything, but I think the quality of the skin is gonna turn out okay if we follow the same, you know, kind of structure that we had in there. So let's just save this one just as a reference. And then let's render the pure model. Okay. Let's start with that. Come on, Maya, you can do faster than that. There's nothing plugged now. Just do this. Let's see if it's gonna reset. Amazing how slow it got all of a sudden. My computer is starting to think here. Can you hear the processor? That's weird. Let's start fresh. Let's do a render update full. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I have a ton of stuff open here. So I have like, no, actually it's not too bad. I have 79 gigs free in here out of the 96. That's pretty good. I thought it would be affecting this, but it's actually not. But I'm surprised how slow it's processing this. I don't know exactly what's going on. Huh. It's really not doing it. Oh, actually, now it did. Just moved to the other monitor, just did all of a sudden. Okay, so now it's rendering, so it should be good to go. For some reason, just like memory. Yeah, okay, that's good. So let's just concentrate in one area here. Let's probably like the cheeks right here. And let's add a little bit more of the specularity back to it. Let's get a little bit more spec so I can actually see what's going on. There. Yeah. So let's plug that map that we just talked about. That was the, it's funny because like now I have like very low resolution in this monitor. It's like it's a 1K resolution, right? Not 1K, is a, yeah, it's like HD, right? So I cannot like show a lot of stuff in this monitor. So let's get to the core of things here. So this is the shader I'm using right now, and this is the cell noise that we just got from there, right? We just grabbed from Arnold. So let's get the cell noise and let's plug into the bump channeling here. So to do that, I'm gonna click the model, the shader, and I'm gonna go all the way to geometry in here. And then under geometry, there is a bump mapping here, right? So what you can do, you can just like grab this guy, and then with the middle click, you can just drag and drop right here. And then you can plug, you can use like the out color, and you can pick one of those colors in here, for example. It's not gonna be, so let's do out color red. And then let's do like a bump value. Let's use for bump value. So that's the bump value. The bump depth in here we're gonna play later. The bump depth we're actually gonna be playing with black and white map to control. Here's the way it's gonna play out. So like to have a control over like how you're gonna modulate the areas that look more rough and areas that look more shiny. For example, like the top of the nose, you wanted to have more shininess, right? Lips the same. For example, eyelids the same. So in that case, we're gonna have like a bump value, like a depth value that's very, very low, right? It's kind of like close to 0, basically. And then if you need areas that have more bumpiness to it, so basically like more micro breakup, right? Like the displacement map is there, and you're gonna break up even further. So we're gonna create kind of like a more diffuse version of the map. It's gonna break up further. Then you're gonna be using like a higher depth for it, right? So with the black and white map we're gonna be painting later, we're gonna control this depth in here. But for now, it's gonna be just a continuous, you know, depth, because we wanna just like find out what's the scale for the cell noise, right? So let's do this. Let's just bring this bump depth here very low. So for example, 0.01, something like that. And then the cell noise in here, we're gonna start with the default. That's alligator. And then the amplitude here and all this stuff, I'm gonna keep everything the way it is for now and just do an experiment with it, right? So let's just render this now and see. So yeah, you can tell already, you know, it's like it's already plugged there. You can tell it's very, very low. Let's just increase a little bit the height of it. Just gonna go back here to my height. Actually, right here. And then just increase this one. See, like this is the type of pattern we are looking for, right? This is the crocodile kind of thing in there. And then if I click this one here, the bump value. So let's do, let's increase this. You see the amplitude in here? It's locked at 1, and you can go lower, right? But then you can also go higher if you want. And same with this guy here. Sometimes like there are controls that you go higher, and then it stops at 5%, but you can keep going with it, you know? So the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna play with the octaves here. Gonna increase some of the complexity of the skin, right? So it's still pretty big in terms of the scale, right? But it has some interesting detail there. So now let's play with the scaling here. Instead of like 1, actually, let's play with the scale first so you can see the result. So instead of 1, let's try 0.5. And actually, this one goes the opposite, sorry. So let's try 5 instead of 1. So 5, 5, 5. So you get like smaller and smaller, right? And then on top of that, you can actually add those octaves, right? That's basically like adding more of that complexity to it. I can keep around like, let's say like 4. And I can keep like making smaller and smaller by increasing the scaling here. So let's do this. Let's just like zoom in, something like this. And let's get an area we can actually see like the nose in here. And it's very, very big at this point, right? It's super big in there. So let's keep playing with it. So let's go with the scale, maybe like, let's go 20 here. Let's see if it's too much. Yeah, that starts actually to work pretty nicely as a breakup. So there's a lot of little complexities we're gonna get in there. And the cool thing is that's gonna be completely seamless, right? Just like just a noise, a fractal that's being applied. So at this point here is very high intensity, right? And also we might be able to go a little bit smaller than this. So let's do this. Let's do maybe like 30. It's gonna be a matter of like feeling in your model, you know, it's like, what do you think? I'm just experimenting with it here. I'm not copying what I had in the previous class. But I think we can just like really get the feel of it. And then let's say like around 30. So I get this type of detail. That looks pretty cool. And then for the amplitude here, I can actually bring it down, make it a little shallower. Either that or like I said before, play with the height of the bump as well. So I'm gonna just bring it down for now. Let's look what we get around here. Okay, so let's go back in here, and then for the depth, let's keep around maybe like 0.2 for now. And then let's plug back our displacement map now. So I want to see the displacement combined with this and see what happens with it. So I'm gonna get to my displacement. Actually, this one is on the native skin, so let's just grab that one. And then this one, grab input and output. So basically like the displacement is right here, right? The one we had plugged yesterday. So that's the native skin. If you just click the top node, you can just go to graph, input and output. It's gonna show what it is. So that's what it is. I'm gonna have to plug in the exact same spot. So I'm just gonna grab this guy here. Click on it. And then I'm gonna go all the way here. I'm gonna click this little arrow. And now it's going to open my displacement material in there. I'm just going to click and drag and drop this one here. So middle click, then drag in there. So now that's plugged. So it's basically shared. So I'm going to click this one again, graph, input and output. And now I should have my displacement plugged in there. So the only things plugged that in this new material we just created is just the displacement shader with the head maps that we exported, the displacement. And then as a bump, we have the cell noise, right, with the alligator stuff. So let's skip those ones and let's just do another render. I just have to make sure that I turn on, again, my preferences in here. So like Control A, select the object, press Control A to go to the attributes, and then go to the Arnold tab, as usual. Arnold, right, just expand it. And then go to here, subdivision, Catmull Clark. And yeah, let's keep iterations at 4 and let's see what happens. So let's do from a little bit of a distance like that. And it's about here. Let's render that. It's gonna take a little bit just to calculate again, bring back the displacement. It wasn't too bad. It was kind of, I guess, was in memory already. And then we're gonna get closer. We don't have any detail in the nose yet, but we have here for the cheeks. So let's see what's the combination of the pores that we have plus the micro displacement, what you're doing at this point. Yeah, it starts to play together very nicely, right? At this point, we don't have a lot of stuff going on. If they have like a, you know, it's like they have like a bump height map to control this stuff. It's very rough right now. The specular map is not there either. So, but we can tell that's actually, there's like this micro little cells that we just added. They're gonna be working like breaking up the skin further, right? So I get like all this breakup right in the middle in there. So once we have the specular and everything in place, then we're gonna start seeing what this all is doing, right? But in terms of scale, I think that's a good starting point, and then we're gonna be playing with it and seeing what we get. So let's jump right back to ZBrush and do some work in here. Now that we have that, we can just like leave it in there and wait. So let me just, before I do this, I'm gonna have to cancel my render here, otherwise it's gonna be rendering in the background. Okay, here you go. So back to this guy here. So yesterday, basically what I did, I continued to work on it a little bit more, right? And it covered this entire area here using like that stamp, like the multiple pores at the same time, just like that little circle you see in there. right? So now we're gonna be jumping into something like the wrinkles, right? And for the wrinkles, it's the kind of stuff that I do that I rather do like asymmetrically already. So I use like the symmetry for the pores themselves. But then when it comes to wrinkle, there's a lot of character already that happens with the wrinkles. So before I do this, because I'm a little OCD, I realized I missed that little spot. I'm just gonna complete it. So it's still symmetrically, right? Just gonna complete this little area here. Gonna add some of those guys. So let's do this. And then we're gonna jump right into the, you see, like sometimes I find a spot that has a little bit too much of a gap, even with the stamp that I have in there. And I go there and on purpose, for example, around here, I add a little extra pore, you know, it's like just to make sure that it's covered kind of like equally all around. So I don't have like big gaps without any pores, right? So I kind of search for it sometimes. I already did this yesterday. But for example, like around here, right? Like sometimes you find a spot that has too much of a gap and I just add some extra pores in there just to add more complexity and kind of like keep the scale a little bit more constant as well. So let's just go back here, finish this little area that should be fast. And again, like working with symmetry just to this point, but then we're gonna break it up very soon. Around there, and then maybe around here. We're going to be talking about the wrinkles and also some of the skin variation stuff. So let's do some of the work in the nose so we can actually see how I approach it. You can tell that, look at this nose in here, the pores are quite visible as well, right? But they're kind of like, they don't quite have this, it's like this little rays coming out of each one of the pores, right? They're more like straight away pores, right? Like it's just the dots in there and they kind of mix with each other and create a little bit of that brain kind of texture I mentioned all the time. But for the most part, they don't have those little, the little sun or the little butthole shape, right? It's just like the little dot and that's about it. So there are a couple of ways I do this. One of them is to actually use the exact same pores that I'm using right now, the same one I use for the skin. See, like this area here, gonna add some more in there just because I think it's a little bit too spread out. So you're gonna just add some in-betweens in there. So instead of like doing this way, right, like you're gonna get like the little, butthole shape, I'm gonna actually go a couple of resolution subdivision levels back. So for example, like Shift D, go back once, Shift D, go back again. And maybe even like, I think around here should be good, but maybe like even a third time. No, actually just around here should be good. And then I'm gonna do this with the asymmetry. So I'm gonna start with that. So I'm gonna create a couple of them in here. And at this point I have the same intensity, right? But I'm gonna just create a few with this intensity. And then I'm gonna switch to some other intensity. So now if I have them like this, if I go back in resolution, you're gonna see they're gonna smooth it out a lot. So I'm gonna go back, let's subdivide once. So you see like it's very, very vague, right? Like it's just like, you have the impression that there is like those little dots in there, but they're not like, it's like super defined or anything like that. So that's one way to do it. Let's just go back here. And then the other way that I do is by using this brush here. So check this out. So if you click the brush, again, like I'm gonna have to break it down for you guys and then you can recreate it in there. But it's, let's see, it's always like, let's see, skin, pores, pimples. So pimple 3, I believe. No, pimple is gonna be always the last one I try. People say it's gonna be pimple 1. Okay, so this guy here. So the way I started this brush is the same way I always start, right? Like it's either like an elastic brush or a standard. In this case was case here was the standard. So if you click the standard brush, you can actually go to your brush and then clone it, right? And start with that. And then the first thing you're gonna switch from your dots into drag rectangle. And then you're gonna pick your alpha 39 in there. And now the trick is gonna be to tweak those values in here. So you can copy this if you want. So basically, like those are the values I'm using. The fall off is that. The mid value is at 50 instead of 0. I'm using a radial fade of 9. Like there's a contrast in there. So basically, copy all those values in there when you have the chance watching the video or now. And then for the shape, remember like the natural curve here is basically like just a diagonal curve, right? So instead of that diagonal curve, I actually modified it quite a bit, because you have to remember that this is the tip that we are sculpting, right? So basically like this is going to be the tip and then the most pronounced area. And then this is going to be like a depth. So basically going to go down and going to go up again. You're going to inflate around it a little bit more. So the effect that this causes when I sculpt, it goes like this. Let me show you. I'm going to have to zoom in pretty much here so you can actually see what it does. So if I go really close to the nose in here, it's going to do something like this. That's exactly what you see right there, right? So you get those little blackheads in there. And obviously you can use with color if you want. If you want to wait, for example, and just add a little color in the middle, then you can actually pick the RGB, turn it on, and with a little bit like a dark, either brown, you know, like, or dark gray. Never go like full black because it always like shows up too much. Or you can go very pale as well, you know, it's like use just like a little like whitish pimple in there. And this is gonna work. You see like it looks very artificial in here, but it works very well in the context of having more texture, right? So we're gonna do a little passing here for the nose itself. That's gonna be just like a general coverage for the nose with that very simple texture we talked about yesterday, which was that random skin, right? So the random skin is that one that has the little, you know, brush from ZBrush, the spray. I showed you the parameters yesterday. Flow 0.25, 0.5. Again, you can copy those values. And then using a very basically like circular motion, I'm gonna start like symmetrical just for the sides in here. And then I'm gonna go asymmetrical in the middle. And I'm gonna make sure that my intensity is not too big. Let's see right now, this is basically what's doing, right? So I think the intensity is a little bit big. I'm gonna go a little bit lower than this, so maybe like around 9. And I'm gonna start actually doing some circular motion in here. And I'm gonna just like break up this entire surface here with a little texture. And then obviously you can smooth it out in areas that you want more smooth and everything. But it's good just to have a little bit of this leathery pattern just to start helping with the sculpture itself, like, you know, breaking up the specular and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna go around here. And then when I get around the middle, I'm gonna just like switch to asymmetrical. And everything is very circular. Like if you can see in the video, like my hand is going like in little circles, very fast little circles like that. Just like to add this little pattern, because if you don't do in circles, right? If you go like in linear motion, you're gonna get this type of pattern right here, right? Which is kind of cool. We're gonna be using it for defining some of the directions for the pores in other places. But for this area here is all circles. It's breaking up pretty good. And then we're gonna combine this. I'm gonna combine this with a combination of pores in there in a lower resolution, and also the little pimples that we just did. When I get to this area here, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start blending this whole thing back. So before you start the sculpting session here, remember that I saved the morph target, right? So I'm gonna just, you know, basically like blend this back. I start blending this all the way around. Let's see, around here, I think should be a good spot. And I'm gonna keep those guys a little bit more pronounced like that. And then around here, just like a little blend like that, right? So let's go back to my random brush. Let's get to it. It's always confusing. my eyes, random, right here. Just like lots of circles. And now I have this nice little texture in there. I can start playing with it. When I get like to this area here, like I mentioned before, what I can do, I can actually increase the intensity just a little bit. Now I went back to 9, gonna go back to 12 or 13. And then around here, then I can use the directionality that I mentioned just now. So basically I'm gonna bring in a direction like that. So I can just like very slightly, you know, like start pulling this and creating a little bit of those micro wrinkles in there, right? You can do the same around this area, for example. A little bit bigger. Let's try that. So basically, like instead of like going in circles, I'm just gonna paint it in a direction like that. Just around this area. And then let's go back to our little circles in here symmetrically and back to 9. So we're gonna build some more in there. I can go as far as, you know, pretty much around here. I still have to add some pores around this area here to cover it up, but I can do this later, it's fine. So now we have like this little pattern there. Now let's play with some pores and then jump right back to the eye bags. I think the eye bags are actually more important at this point. Maybe we can do that first. Yeah, let's do that first. Let's go here to the eye bags and then come back to the nose and we add some detail in there. So for the eye bags, let's go back to my referencing here. And then there are a couple of things we're gonna be sculpting later on. I'm gonna be doing a lot of cleaning up of this area here and make sure that it's conforming to the eyeball perfectly. This is gonna be in another of our sessions. But for today, we're gonna be concentrating on sculpting the eye bag itself. And I'm gonna start just by switching to my carve brush, that little one that I created, right? With it's my fake DEM standard, right? And then I'm gonna start carving things here. Remember, like when I was doing the wrinkles for those guys, for example, around here, right? Like around the nasolabial, I was actually connecting the dots in this side right there. So in this case here, I'm not gonna have the same pores because I don't have any pores in this area. So I'm gonna have to start like sculpting the wrinkles straight away. So I'm gonna start by adding some directionality here. So basically, I'm gonna start like by adding some of those guys going this way and try not to get like too straight with them. So basically like I'm gonna be doing a little bit of echoing here. And then from the middle, I can just pull another one and then kind of like break up a little bit like that. So those guys are gonna start like with this direction. And then around here, you see that little curtain that I just sculpted in there, right? Like it was kind of like the saggy skin in there. I'm gonna start actually digging this a little bit deeper. And then there's a lot of echoing that's gonna happen here. So basically like those guys. By the way, I think I turned off my, let me just smooth it out. I turned off my lazy mouse because of the shooting that was going everywhere, right? So I think I'm gonna turn back on, but I might get into that problem again. So now I have my lazy mouse back. Just gonna define like in certain areas what direction I wanna go, right? So I define some of them going that direction. I'm gonna get some other ones coming this way. And then this way is gonna start forming this wrinkle. And then again, like never going too far with the wrinkle, right? Always like starting to break it up. And then let's go back around here. So if I look at my reference in there, I'm gonna get some wrinkles gonna be more hero. They're gonna be doing exactly this, right? So some of them are gonna be a little bit more marked and stronger than the other ones. And then I'm gonna get other ones, it's like those ones are coming from the side in here. So we're gonna get some of them doing this, right? And then from here, I'm gonna get some of them going the opposite direction. So I'm gonna go around there. And then trying to keep like, just like define some of them just for direction, for reference. And then we're gonna be filling the in-betweens and everything. But for now, we need to actually figure it out based like the structure. And then when you get around here, when you get like to the pores themselves, you're gonna start actually doing some work later with the micro ones. You're gonna get like really into digging into them, kind of invading the little space a little bit, and then making them blend with the wrinkles themselves, right? So we're gonna get something like this. You can go as far as, it's like going like, as long as you're connecting some of those little dots and making sure that everything reads more naturally, right? So around here, I'm gonna keep doing the same thing. Let's get those guys. And then we're gonna do another pass. So there's a bunch of different passes we're gonna be doing. There is this one here, we are just marking the spots where the wrinkles are. And then we're gonna go and we're gonna actually add volume to them, right? Because there are like a couple of different types of wrinkles. Some of them, they look like scratches, for example. They are kind of shallow and they just like, that's the way they read. But some of the major wrinkles, like they're gonna produce some volume, right? Like there's a lot of form being compressed. And then when you have that, you're gonna have like some in-between, forms being created. In this case here, for example, right, like those wrinkles here, they're pretty big. So I'm gonna try to, cut them around there, kind of like add some, it's like instead of like going a straight line, you're just cutting across, but then cutting and finding some of those little wrinkles, little pores, just to help. And also make sure that everything is a little bit more, a little shorter, right? Instead of like just going constantly with the same line all the way across. Same here, if it's a straight line like that, that's blocked, you can always break it up. Find some pores to connect. Right there. So eventually you end up like having like this kind of like a leathery kind of quality to it. So when you get to this area here, you're gonna start cutting around there. Same thing, like it's like interrupting like the stroke from time to time, using some variation in the pressure as well. Like it's like I start like, for example, like you can start very, very faint, and then you go deeper, and then you go more faint again right at the end. You can smooth out the ends, for example. And then obviously you're going to be using that random brush as well to help with the detail in there. So the random brush, which I lost again. Where is it? Right here. So then I can use the same directionality, right? Like, so it's going to look a little weird at first, but we can define some directions in here. So for example, bring it like this. Kind of like bring all the way, define that little direction, and we can actually bring from the other direction now. Some of that doing this, just creating like a little bit of a crisscrossing in there, but without going too deep, because we need to control the specularity in there. And then it would be nice if this is not like too busy. So it's just to add some detail, but without carving too deep, just like keep it shallow. Around here, we're gonna do the same. So we're gonna keep moving them directional with direction, right? Like, so I'm gonna be sculpting instead of like in circular motion, just like a very, very controlled linear way like that. Just to add some of those micro stuff in there. Since I'm doing this on that side, I'm gonna just move to the other side here. So at least I know I'm using the same intensity and everything. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to be chasing the other day to match it, right? So I'm just gonna do this for now. And then the wrinkles obviously are gonna be all asymmetrical, but at least the depth of this has to be kind of consistent. This is gonna be kind of like the same approach you're gonna do like for the upper eyelids. So, around here, you're gonna use some of that, especially around here. It's it's like I'm sculpting multiple layers in here at the same time, right? So basically, like I'm concentrating. This is basically like tertiary form, but then I'm sculpting the secondary forms as well, because when I carve those bigger forms in here are going to be actually adding some more in between stuff, like in really pumping the forms in there as well. So let's do this. Oh, sorry, I reversed it. Make a little bit deeper than that. Something like that. And then around here, I'm gonna keep digging. So those guys here eventually are gonna get, like, some of them, you're gonna become like the little heroes, right? So I'm gonna start with some smaller ones first, like that. But then eventually I pick one of them and I go a little bit deeper with it. And then obviously there's a lot of bumps you're gonna be adding in this area here. And there's a lot of skin variation as well, like in terms of, you know, depth of pores and wrinkles and things like that. So I'm gonna just change the direction of this a little bit. I start connecting to those little pores in there. And then eventually, like if I'm doing something and those lines are too parallel, you just pick one and kind of like add a little bit more of the diagonal. So you create this kind of like crisscrossing effect. And then we can get like to a lower resolution. For example, we go like 2 steps back or maybe 3. And we can also use our trusty clay buildup with alpha 36 or 37, something like that. And then you can actually add some of the major forms, right? Like the bigger stuff at this resolution. So let's switch to intensity around 3. And I'm just gonna build up some of those guys, like the in-betweens here. Right, so I'm gonna get some of that around here as well. Cannot go too crazy because I don't wanna age this guy too much. I wanna keep him like, you know, experienced, but not like a no dude, right? I have enough old dudes in there. So basically like going in between those little lines I just defined, and then just adding some of the forms right there, just like to create this kind of like more organic feel. And then all this stuff is built like step by step, right? Like, so you do this, mark first the directions and everything. You can come and build up some of those wrinkles. And then at the end, you can also use some of the inflate brush very carefully. You can use like with intensity like 1, something like that. And then add some more organic feel to it just by compressing things a little bit more. So let's do this. I'm not sure yet about the structure of this guy's face, right? So at this point here, I'm doing the detail because it's part of our program, but there's a lot of stuff I'm gonna be changing in this guy, like in terms of some of the primary forms as well, but I have to do carefully because at this point we already have a lot of detail applied to it. So I'm gonna have to be very careful the way I'm gonna be moving stuff around. I have to use like broad move brushes, you know. So basically, like, okay, so we got like some of those forms in place. Let's break up some of them a little bit further. If it's too simplistic, looks like a gigantic bag in there. Let's go to the lowest resolution of my HD. Well, actually, I am at my lowest resolution, so I might have to actually go lower than that. But one thing that I use sometimes is just the same carved brush that I normally use for everything. I can reduce the intensity quite a bit, like to, I don't know, like 4 or 5. And then I can increase the size of my brush a lot. So if I do this, I start like getting, you know, like some bigger form detail like that when I carve. So that can help me to actually define some of those forms in here, even after I have stuff sculpted. So I'm gonna just dig this one a little bit deeper in here, define that bag a little bit more. So basically like playing with the secondary forms right now, right? And I'm gonna sharpen, this one I can do in symmetry, sharpen this little edge a little bit. Not by much. I mean, like, especially with older dudes, you get like more roundness to it. It's almost like it looks puffy. So I'm gonna just like add some of the sharpness, but without going too crazy with it. And then I'm gonna go back in here and actually dig this one. a little bit more. Same with this guy here. So now I have a little bit more form in there, so it's not like too simplistic. And then there is a bigger line that I see my reference in there, and that guy that's kind of like going around there. So let's just turn off the symmetry at this point, and then we're gonna be tweaking that. So okay, so now we got a little bit more form in there, and let's go back to our higher intensity at 12 or 13. Go back in resolution, like all the way up. And let's add some more more interesting stuff in here. Right now it's very simplistic. So let's start like breaking up this line into smaller little lines in there, coming from the other direction as well. Always being concerned about like not making things too parallel, right? Like if you're doing a line and you have to do another one, try to do it slightly in the diagonal. And even if you have already something that's parallel like this, like those two, you can come with one in the middle, you know, so I can kind of like try to break it up. So you create like a little bit more of this cross pattern instead of like something that's twinning and parallel, you know, that can help with breaking up that impression. I'm gonna do this, gonna get this. Some of those lines, in his case here, I'm looking, they're going this way up, and then around here, they are breaking up the other direction. So they're coming like towards that direction. So I'm gonna just add some of them, and then I'm gonna break up with some, you know, pimples and things right in the middle. I'm gonna just do like very faint in here so I can actually, you know, tweak it later. I'm just gonna bring it like this. And then keep controlling it, going lower, and maybe add this one as a hero one here. So carve pretty deep and break it up so it's not like a continuous line. And this one I can actually bring deeper and then lower in here. Something like that. And let's get this guy here and transform into a little bit more of a hero as well. Some smaller ones. You're starting to add a little bit of more cross hatching right there. So from this angle, you can see it. And then there are a couple of things you can do here. There's another brush I can show you, which is this one here. Let's see. So I have this stubble. And then let's see, skin pores, random, skin random. There's one pimple elastic. Let's see. So this is the pimple elastic one that I showed you guys before. This one I can use for this area here. For example, you know, just to add like right here, you're gonna get lots of those little pimples around this area. Like most people are gonna have those kind of like the little fat deposits in there. So I can add some of them in here, and then I can go as far as adding some of them around this area here because you have like the little ingrown hair, right? So you're gonna get some of that in there. But for now, I'm just gonna add some of them like so around this area. And I like that Arnold is so good, like when it comes to the way it displaces things and adds subsurface to it, that if you have this type of bumps in here, when the subsurface scattering hits them, they look kind of like translucent little bubbles, you know? So it looks very, very cool and natural. So I'm gonna actually play with intensity. So I'm gonna make a little bit bigger and then less intensity. So I have some of them more defined than the other ones. You can go as far as going around here as well. And then what we can do, let's look at the, if we use this one, for example, this brush here, let's just duplicate it. clone. And then instead of like using a drag rectangle, let's switch to a spray, for example. And let's see what this one does. That's pretty cool. So let's increase the intensity so you can see what's doing here. Setting a lot of variation, right? But it's very close together. So let's try to play with the flow and also with the rest of the parameters. So the flow is at 0.25, which is basically doing this, right? So let's see what happens if I reduce it to 0. It didn't change much. Normally it changes, but for some reason for this specific one, it's not changing that much. So let's try the placement. Let's keep the placement a little bit bigger than 5. Let's try 1. Okay, so now it's more spread out. And then let's play with the size of the alpha itself. So if I use an alpha, let's say like a tiny one, let's see, like 45. That's kind of interesting. But the fall off is not like great at this point, right? So let's try to do, for example, like use the same one we're using, the 37. And then let's just play with maybe a radial fade. Just increase it. Yeah, so that looks nicer. So at this point here, what I can do with this, guys, I can use as a new brush that I just created, right, to add variation for stuff. So instead of like using the positive like this, I can actually switch to sub and then use as a negative, right? And then reduce the intensity. So let's do, I don't know, like 27. Yeah, that's pretty cool. See, like you can create something like this that you can apply to the skin itself to add some variation to it, right? So basically, like it's a elastic brush with the spray in it, and basically like the flow is at 0, placement's at 1, and I'm using like the alpha 37. That's just like tweaked to have more of a radial fade in here. So just like to reduce the size, the overall size of it, right? So with that one, I can actually go to an area like this, for example, like around the cheeks in here, and I can just like, it doesn't seem like much, but when I render, this is going to start looking a little bit more, you know, there's more variation in the skin. You're going to have like those micro, you know, it's like you know, holes in there, right? And I have to make sure that I have like a similar size that I'm using, because at this point here, it's going to be kind of like hard to see what I'm doing, right? So I'm just like spraying with the circular motion as well. Just adding some variation in there. I'm going to do the same for this area here. So we're going to use the negative first for the whole muzzle. Same around here. And then I'm going to come with the positive version of it, which is basically like a bunch of little pimples. And this, I mean, like you can keep using it because it's basically like non-destructive, right? It's not going to destroy your pores or anything like that. It's just like, you know, how much variation you want to add, right? You cannot add so much that's going to look like a disease, like a skin disease, but you can add a lot, you know. So I'm going to switch to the positive now, and that's basically what I'm going to get around the nose, see right there. So that's what I'm going to get in the skin. So I'm going to get some of those bumps in the skin now. And I'm gonna have to go a little bit stronger when it comes like to the muzzle area itself because of the ingrown hair and all that stuff. Neck's gonna be the same, right? So I'm gonna try to do like in a very broad way right here. And you guys, by the way, like feel free to ask any questions. I'm gonna switch to the highest resolution. I just realized it was one subdivision level less than the highest. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, and we're gonna keep working. So add, so we're gonna add some of that. Actually, I can increase the intensity here. Let's see in the lips how that affects it. Something like that. So I'm gonna try to do this in the muzzle area. Yeah, it's interesting. Like once I discovered this whole elastic thing, obviously, like who introduced me to the elastic brush was Frank at work. He used this a lot, but but when I realized you can actually use it with spray and things like that, it's like to add variations, it's a miracle because it's totally non-destructive. It's like it preserves all the pores you already sculpted, and you still can keep working on it. Another way, obviously, is like to go to a lower resolution, right? And just add some of those bumps with a regular brush. And then when I go to the highest, most of the stuff should be preserved. But this one is actually pretty good at preserving everything, right? Especially around here, the chin, right? I'm gonna have to add lots of bumpiness to it. Make it a little bit nastier, the skin in there. This is the kind of brush that the speed of your hand is gonna depend on it. If you do too slowly, you're gonna get too much concentration of those, so it's gonna be too close together. If you do a little faster in circular motions, then you get a little bit more randomness, and they get more spread out. So just make sure when you're sculpting, you move your hand in fast circles, right? And you get more of that variation. So this is one of the many passes you're going to be doing to create like a more natural looking skin. But this combined with all the the specular maps you're going to be painting and everything else, at the end we're going to have a skin that looks pretty convincing. And don't be scared, like when you look at skin like this in ZBrush, sometimes you think, oh man, the pores are too deep, it's like it's looking a little bit too much. I don't know about that. This is going to be pretty much like very subtle once you bring into Maya and you render with subsurface scattering. The scatter is going to kill a lot of detail. So it's important that you have like the skin fairly, the pore is fairly deep, like this, if you want to render something that looks okay. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very simple. It's going to be hard to see what you just did. More around here. And then there's another brush that I created that's it's a stubble brush. And that one I normally use only when I'm painting the color later on, like the albedo, because I want to make sure I'm sculpting some stubble, so I'm adding to the form, but I'm painting the color at the same time. So that's why I'm not going to use just now. But there is a cool brush in there that's just to create this stubble. So it's kind of like a smaller version of those little pimples I just created here. Now he has like, it started to look a little bit more interesting, right? Like it's still like we still have to play with the major forms, like the secondary forms in here. They're still too even, right? We have to add some more randomness to them as well, so it doesn't look like the form is so perfect. But in terms of the skin itself, it starts to look a little bit more interesting. It's not that patterny, super well-defined thing anymore. Now it starts to get a little bit more of a couple of bumps, bruises. So I'm going to reverse it again. I'm going to add the negative again. So get like some acne in there, especially around here in the cheeks. I've seen some of those guys, natives, they have like I don't know if it's like a bad case of acne or something, but they have like some pretty big holes sometimes, when it comes to their faces. And then I can use some of that around the nose as well here. So let's just add some of those little pimples, little marks in here on the side as well. And then we're gonna get here like with our blackhead brush, and we're gonna enhance some of those. Get some of that, just like to add some randomness to it. See, like all those brushes, they're very simple solutions, right? Like it's just like mostly the stuff that comes with ZBrush, just tweaked like just right to create the effect you want, basically. And then obviously you need like very custom stuff, like if you want to use like different types of pores for different parts of the face, for example, then you can do that. But for the most part, you can get away with a lot of work done with like regular stamps, and that's the the whole thing that people don't realize. I mean, there's a lot you can do with very simple tools. So now that we have like all this randomness in there, I kept everything asymmetrical in the middle, like for that purpose, right? Now let's play with some other stuff. Let me save this brush because this one is useful. I don't think I have something like this saved. So let's just go to brush, save as, and let's go to my ZBrush, blah, 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 Pixel Logic, and then 19, see startup, and brush presets. So that's gonna be, you see, like I name things in a way that then I cannot find. So intro, and let's do skin bumps elastic. Maybe it's a similar one, but let's see, spray bumps elastic. I don't know if I'm gonna find this later, but it is there. It's there. Hey.
Just wanted to mention, if you want, for brush management, I use a plugin called XMD.
Oh yeah. He offered me, man, like a lifetime thing, and I never used the program, but I know it's pretty cool. You can manage it's much easier, right?
Yeah, even if you don't, I mean, they have a lot of brushes in the shop, but even if you just use your own, if you have a lot, it's very good for managing.
Yeah, he's my friend on Facebook, man, and he offered like a couple of times, like, oh, you should use it. Like, okay, I'm gonna install, but I'm just I'm such a mess, man. I have to to optimize my workflow. But I know that one is it's pretty cool. I'm gonna install it eventually. I'm gonna install it. It looks very cool. He has a school as well, right? Like he's teaching classes and everything. I think like some people are teaching classes for him. So the other one we have is that one that I mentioned yesterday. That's also elastic brush. That's the let's see, depth, like the pore depth, right? This one here is also elastic brush. It's just that the alpha is tweaked in a way that it creates this little point. So I can make this point even like sharper. For example, if I reverse it, right, it's kind of like that. But I can make the point a little bit sharper by tweaking this little curve here. Something like that. And then let's add this Z sub. And then I'm gonna start like actually picking some of them, those ones I just created, this random ones. So I'm gonna pick right in the middle of them and just like increasing the depth a little bit with elastic, right? So pick a couple of them. So a couple of them are gonna do like very simplistic like that. And a few of them are gonna actually add the little pimple brush that we just talked about. So I'm gonna get some of them. And it's like, you know, it's like there's no automatic solution for anything, right? Like in this class here, we're gonna be doing a lot of stuff manually. But I think it's cool, you know, it's like that you guys gonna get exposed to this type of stuff. Like instead of like, just like, oh, okay, just add like a brush, blah, blah, blah package or whatever, you know. At least like this way, you know how to create the effect and create like your own brushes and things like that. I think it's important, you know, it's like to just, because sometimes you don't have access to stuff, you know. There are many times you have like access to scan data and you have some texturing XYZ stuff, but then there are certain areas that you really want to have a little bit more control, you know. It's like you have something that's has a sharper detail, for example, like for extreme close-ups. And then being able to create stuff by hand, even though it's like I said, nothing that I do is real, like extremely realistic, right? Everything is very, how you call like idealized, right? It's an idealization of the skin, for example. But when you put all those pieces together at the end, the result looks realistic, you know, and that's what we're looking for. We're creating something that's that can pass as realism, but without being realistic. It's just like completely organic and artistic way. So I think that's, I know it's not like the fastest way to do it, for sure, but it's definitely the most fun, you know. It's like you preserve a lot of your creative freedom. For example, like all these pimples I'm putting one by one, right? I'm kind of like, you know, picking the spots and choosing where I want to put them and everything. You have a lot of freedom to decide what to do with the skin, you know. It's like how we're gonna incorporate stuff. So I think it's pretty cool instead of like just slapping a texture and getting done. I think it's cool that you can actually, study, how things work in real life, or at least like try to recreate something that is idealized but is passable as realistic. So I think that's my my shtick with this class, is just create something that's handmade, I guess. So now I have some of them applied in there, but I don't have a lot of the positive bumps, right? And I don't have my pimples as well. So let's switch back to the pimple brush. If I can only find it, I always forget what it is. I think it was around here, pimple 1. And so I can pick again like a few of those little holes that I created before. And I'm just gonna pick one in there. And now you see, like, now that I would have like a clean surface anymore, now the pimples actually look a little bit more natural, right? Because before, remember, like, they look very, fake, out of context, without the texture to back them up. And now if you add them like this, they start to actually work much nicely. And obviously, like, trying to keep like the intensity and the scale, like variation between them, right? So we're gonna get some of them a little bigger. And then later I can go and just like paint the little dots with a different color if I want to, when we are doing like the albedo stuff. Starting to add some nastiness in there. And then obviously gonna be sculpting some of this stuff, adding some more bumps so it doesn't look like too plain, right? But it's all that thing that we build like layer by layer, like all those things. Like I do things in circles, as you can tell. It's like I cannot concentrate in just doing one part of the body and then moving to the next one. I do some work in here, and then I was like, okay, that's the ballpark. That's where I'm gonna go. It's a matter of like just repeating what I just did multiple times until I cover a certain area. So I kind of like end up like moving to a different place and then doing more work. For example, like the wrinkle direction, defining for the eye bags and things like that. And then switching back and coming here, I was like, okay, what's necessary now? What's the next step to look a little bit more natural? And then add that as well, Kind of go all over the place eventually. You see, like right now, still pretty, there's not a lot going on in there. It's just like enough, but eventually this is going to be covered with stuff. So now we have a ballpark for the nose. We're going to be doing much more of this around there, but we need to add some more breakups. So let's switch back to the random one. So let's go to my skin random, and let's do a little bit deeper now. So let's get go a couple of resolutions back, for example, like 1 or 2, and get a little deeper with this and a little bit bigger. Oops, too big. Just like randomly, just picking some of those areas, just adding some of those cuts. And it's like a lower resolution, right? So we just add the variation, but without destroying the fine detail that's on top. Got a little funky there. Let's see. Go back 1 subdivision level. I'm going to smooth it out just very slightly. So I keep playing with this, it's like go back in resolution, add some detail. If I don't want the detail to be super sharp, just go a couple of steps back, and then you add the detail. And then when you go back, it's very, very kind of blurry. So that's what we want. So let's go back here. Okay, so I got a little bit more of that randomness in the tip, That's good. And then let's start playing with some of those extra wrinkles on the sides in here, like the nasolabial. Let's merge some of this pores with the wrinkles now. Let's go to the carve. And then we're going to try to explore a little bit of everything, so you guys have a ballpark to start, Because what I try to do normally, like in those classes, like I said before, I show you guys exactly how I'm doing it. And then if I'm doing anything after the class, it's going to be basically repeating those things. I don't want to do something that I didn't show during the class. And sometimes it might happen. I mean, like I do something, I was like, okay, I didn't show this to them. But then normally like the next day, first thing I do is like, okay, see that thing that I did in there? You know, it's like, that's basically the brush that I used and everything. I want to make sure you guys are following everything, you know. And if it's something that I'm doing on my own time, I hope it's always like repetition, you know. It's basically my intention at least. So let's go back here. So I'm going to start cutting those lines, looking for little dots to connect in here. I mean, like from the nose itself, which is like it's a little bit smoother surface, right? Like it's always like those areas of blending, they're very important because you want to make sure that things look convincing, you know? You don't want to go like from an area that has a ton of pores to an area that has absolutely no pores with no transition whatsoever. So around this area here, I definitely going to start adding some pores, like, and they're going to start getting more and more spread out around there. And then what I'm doing right now is actually just doing the wrinkles to help with the blending when I have those little pores in place. And then when I get around here, then they're going to start going, you know, it's like in blending with those other structures in there. There's so much you can do when it comes to skin, you know. It's like I said before, I mean, like how far you want to go, right? First, we're not God. There's no way you're going to be able to reproduce nature. Not even with the awesome tools we have these days, we cannot recreate like the skin perfectly, right? There's always a limiting resolution and things like that. But when you're not attached to that, how far you want to go, how far you want to push it on your model when you're doing by hand, right? Because if you have enough resolution, you can push pretty hardcore if you want, you know. It's like you can go, if you have a shot like professional work, you have a shot that you have like a super macro you want to do, you can definitely recreate something that looks pretty cool for close-up shots, you know, doing by hand. And maybe you would be able to do that if you're using like scans, you know. It's like, unless they have some technique to capture like macroscopic stuff, you know, microscopic stuff. But that's why it's cool, you know. It's like to understand how or at least try to understand how the structures of the skin work, because you can use that. It's almost like learning anatomy for your character, you know. It's like at some point, if you model enough biceps, right? Sometimes you don't need a reference anymore. You know where the biceps, the insertion points are and everything, and you're just going to do it. And with the skin, it's going to be the same. A lot of stuff I do, I don't use reference. I kind of like get a ballpark and then I just wing it, because I kind of like know a little bit about how things work, at least like in my own perception, you know. Like I said, like all the stuff I do is like based on my own perception of how I observe things, but not necessarily are the real way to do it. There's no real way. It's just like how you interpret it, I guess. But it works for my stuff, you know. So if you guys try, you're probably gonna find out like, okay, Chris did that way and it worked for his model, but for my model, it works a little bit better if I do this way. And it's totally cool, you know. It's like anything you can incorporate and change the technique or whatever you want to do, you know. It's like, it's very freeing the way I do stuff, you know. It's like there is no rule. I mean, like it's that's the way that I do it, and it works for my stuff. But you know, it's like I have students who did amazing work using part of my techniques, but then part of their own techniques, and all mixed together, and the result looks really awesome. So anything that helps you guys. See, I'm getting a little crazy there, right? Like sculpting a little bit too much stuff. This is the kind of stuff that it turns out to be really cool. I'm going to be probably posting a lot of super close-ups just to show that the detail is in there, just to show off it. But yeah. Then here, I start sculpting the lips. We're not going to have too much time today to do more sculpting the lips, but I can do some of this, you know, wrinkles. Kind of like going towards the lips in here very slightly. again, like looking for different paths in here to connect
Hey
it.
Chris, one
Yes.
question.
Uh-huh.
If you're doing a lot of blend shapes, making different expressions, do you find that the skin texture conforms quite naturally because it stretches in similar way, or is there a need to resculpt some stuff for super close-ups?
Yeah, I mean, like there are a couple of ways that people approach those things these days. For example, if it's for production, there is a way that you can create the effect of stretch the skin. There's a couple of techniques they use these days. The other one is using like your blend shapes connected to sculpted displacement maps that you can actually dial in together. So like when I sculpted like the skin for the Hulk for the first Avengers, um, there were a couple of shots in there that the Hulk had very extreme expressions, and the blend shapes were not enough to create that tension. So what I did, I created like some very customized like displacement sculptures, just like for crunched ice and stuff like that. And then they used those displacement maps connected to their shader network just to create that crunch. And there's a bunch of other stuff, for example, like the blood flow. They have like something in our shaders in there that it can calculate the compression in the blend shape, and then you can generate like the blood flow. For example, like you know, when you have like a very extreme expression, like an anger, and you get like right in the where the wrinkles are, basically like the blood is not there anymore. It's kind of like strangled, so it gets a little bit greenish, and you know, it's like everything around gets red, but like the wrinkles themselves get kind of pale and greenish. So there are a bunch of things they do in production these days that can create those effects. But in our case, since it's just portrait, everything we have to just emulate, right? So if there's a stretch or anything, you basically like just sculpt it. But yeah, for blend shapes is a whole different ballpark because there's a lot of stuff involved to create something really realistic, you know. It's the kind of stuff like my wife, she mentioned at some point, like, oh, are you planning to do some animation with those characters and stuff? I was like, no, because it's like 100 times more difficult than what I'm doing right now. Sculpting, it's easy. Yeah, make something move convincingly, right? And you basically like have the $1 million in your pocket. I mean, nobody so far was able to create something that you can tell like, oh man, this is really realistic. I mean, there is no way. I mean, like I cannot see how this is CG, right? You can only tell it's CG, like no matter how they do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, like when I went to the movie theater with my wife at some point, we were looking at one of the Star Wars movies, and then she was convinced that the guy was actually was a real person, right? Until I mentioned, and as soon as I mentioned, it's like, oh yeah, I noticed there was something that was, yeah, I know, yeah, I know, but she wasn't completely aware, but she was at that point. So sometimes people have that stuff, you know. It's like sometimes you people think that they know what they're seeing, right? It's just like because we get so picky over time. But at the same time, there's no way to discuss with a human being that's specialized in seeing other human beings since birth, right? Like basically, like we can read faces since birth. So everybody is a little bit of a specialist in facial expression. So that argument like, oh yeah, but you don't do CG is not valid, because just by being a human, you have the right to question anything that's in the movies. But I learned over time to just like not like be too picky with stuff, because I can be a pain in the ass, right? Like if I'm so critic about my own work, I hate most of the stuff I do, you know, it's like next day. But how can I be nice to other people's work, right? Like I try my best. I mean, like I try like to be very constructive when I'm giving criticism and stuff like that, right? But I'm seeing a lot of stuff that I'm not liking, and sometimes it's my own perception. It happened in the past. For example, I was doing like feedback, like doing those review sessions, and I watched myself later criticizing something. I was like, dude, that was actually look pretty right. And it's just like my perception from one day to the next one kind of like, you know, switched a little bit. I was like, yeah, he was pretty on point with that, you know. But I mean, like an example is like watching Alita with my wife the other day, and I watched for the first time, and I really liked the movie. It was really cool. And I try not to pay attention, I mean, like to the technicalities or anything like that. It's pretty brilliant, you know, it's like they did an amazing job. But there are certain things that really bother me, but I just like didn't let that out. I mean, like I was just like watching and enjoying the movie for what it is. And we work in this area, we know that things are not perfect, you know, it's like no matter how much you try, things are not going to be perfect. And you just like deal with it. And my wife was the one like, oh yeah, but you know, you should work on that because you would do that part better. I was like, no, I'm not sure. They're, the guys doing this, they're very talented, and they have the same type of like time constraints, you know. Sometimes you just don't have the time to do things better. And then you're being pulled in many directions, you know. It's like sometimes it's the client, like it's the director saying one thing, and then they're, you know, getting together with the investors, people putting money in the movie, right? And the investors, although they're not specialists in art or anything like that, they have their saying because they're putting all the money in it. So it's like you're being pulled in all directions, man. And sometimes something that, for example, the first version could have been like much better, but someone in the middle of the whole thing said like, no, let's change this. You know, I don't like it. And then sometimes if you question why I don't like it, the answer is just I don't like it. You know, that's it. You're not the one with the money. You don't have to call the shots. You know. But that's one thing that people who are not in the industry don't get it sometimes. You know, it's like people aspiring to get in the industry is that the work is never yours. You know, it's like you are doing the work for someone else, and if you do it well, the client's gonna be happy. You know, and that means that you're gonna have to, like we say in Brazil, eat some frogs. You know, it's like you're not gonna be doing exactly what your vision is gonna tell you to do. You're gonna try to help as much as you can, and try to incorporate things that you think can help the project. But if the client at some point says like, oh, that doesn't work for me, that's it. You just like changing, you know. And at the end of the day, you're gonna get the same salary. You're gonna be there. You know, it's like working the same time, unless you're working for free. Thing that I don't do. I don't work for free. Overtime or I go home. But that's it, man. It's part of the job, you know. It's like, and then why do you think I'm teaching those classes? You know, it's like to actually fulfill my own wishes and direct myself and do whatever I want. You know, it's like that's why personal work is so important. But it comes with sacrifices, right? Because at the end of the day, man, I'm exhausted, and I still have to, you know, do the work. You know, because first I was forcing myself before. I was doing this before I was teaching classes anyway. But now is extra pressure because I don't want to let you guys down, you know. So if I'm tired, just like I swallow it and then I keep going with it. And I think that's an important thing to think as well. You know, it's like discipline. It's more important than actually this thing about waiting for inspiration that sometimes doesn't come. And I think what you have to do is actually just prioritize things. You know, there are days that you're so tired that you don't want to do anything. But then you just like switch to something that's easy to do and it's not gonna fry your brain further. So just like put a list of priorities, you know, it's like what's in my list? I have this entire model I have to do. I have to, you know, sculpt the eyelids. I have to, you know, sculpt the lips, blah, blah, blah. What's the easiest thing I can do today? Oh, maybe just like tweaking that UV that was kind of broken. Okay, I'm gonna do that and then gonna go to bed. But at least you get something done in that night, you know. That's very important to get something done. And if you get a lot done, then you go to bed, it was like, that was not too bad. I thought I would not have energy for anything. But the only thing that it took was just the first step. And then all of a sudden I have that entire section done now. I was like, that was a good night. So that's how I face it every night. You know, it's like, I'm going to get some stuff done and then, you know, and we do what we can. But I mean, like all those models for those classes, I mean, like none of them are finished. I don't consider finished. Some of them have problems with the likeness. Some of them have problems with the skin and everything. So I have always this plan, you know, it's like during the break, for example, like between November and December, I'm not going to be teaching classes. So my plan is to actually revisit those models and give some love to them and actually try to finish some of those portraits, you know, and present with the posed characters and a little bit more love in general, you know. But I have to find that time to do it. Yeah, let's go back to the eye here since we have some time still. Let's see, 11:04. Yeah, we have plenty of time. We have like half an hour. That's great. So let's do some more sculpting here, get more stuff done. Yeah, it's like when you have kids, man, it's like it adds a little extra layer. So if you don't have kids right now, consider yourself lucky. I mean, like kids gonna change your life for the better. I mean, like it's amazing. But when it comes to time to do your own stuff, then you're gonna have to, you know, yeah. Unless you want to be like a shitty parent, then you just like never be around. But if you want to be a decent parent, I mean, like you're gonna have to be part of things in school. You know, it's like drive the kids and be part of their life, right? Help with bedtime if you can. So yeah, that's going to consume a good chunk of your time for sure.
Just talking about that subject, it took me a while to figure that part out.
Which one?
And just like the whole balance.
Oh yeah, man.
Like working full time, taking care of the family, like, you know, like exercising at least once or twice a week.
Yeah.
Having time to do your personal projects, having time to how'd you call it, like freelance and still learn and all that. It took a while to balance it out.
Yeah. How are you doing now?
I remember the turning point is I just told my wife, I was like, okay, here's my calendar, just block throughout the week, just see wherever you need me, let's just block that time out.
That's a great way to do it.
And from there it became so easy because then it's because she's the one who picked the slots. There's
she feels supported, right?
Yeah, there's never any discussion about, oh, why are you downstairs working? Why can you help me with it? It's like everything is very clear and easy.
That was very similar to what we did too. You know, when I was teaching those classes, when I started in May, I told her, you know, things gonna have to change. I mean, like, tell me how you want me to support you. But for example, like bedtime, for example, might be a little compromised. And then, you know, it's like I still have Friday to help out with stuff, you know, but she was super sweet. I mean, like she's taking on a lot of stuff. So from time to time, I just give her a full break. And the thing is, like, my kids, they are totally attached to her. Like they need her for bedtime every day. So sometimes if she's too exhausted, I just tell her, you know, it's like, just tell them that you're going to go to yoga tonight. And then basically, like, we have to tell those little lies, you know, it's like, oh yeah, mommy's gonna go to yoga, because if they know she's around, they're gonna freak out. So you just tell them, and then I just like take them and just like read stories and put them to sleep, you know. But yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. My son wakes up because he's only 2.5.
Oh, very little.
And he wakes up like he's attached to his mom. I could be gone tomorrow, he wouldn't care. But his mom, it's like, you know, he wakes up in the middle of the night, he looks for her, comes to bed, or he'll go, if he doesn't see her for a bit, he'll go and look if her car is out, parked outside, and things like that. So he's very, very attached to her. Luckily, I can distract him, like by playing and things like that, but definitely attached to his mom.
Yeah. It's the same with my kids. I mean, like, I was raised by just my mom, right? My dad passed away before I was born. So it's just like my mom all the time. And it was like, it's just like I miss her smell, you know. It's like I tell my wife sometimes, I wish my mom was around so I could smell her, you know. It's like, it's just like, it's something so special, like a mom, like more than a dad for sure. But obviously there are dads in there that basically, like, they raise kids by themselves, and those guys are, man, those are amazing. You know, it's like you can do all this stuff, you know, and keep your cool and keep your, yeah, that's awesome. Some heroes there. Yeah, it's still a little simple in the shapes in there and the forms, but eventually you're gonna get more and more stuff carved in. Let's do, let's see. Let's get some more those wrinkles coming like from a little bit deeper here. I'm seeing it's a little bit simple right now. Create some crisscrossing around here. And again, like start really going towards the pores in here and blending them together. Eventually, like an area like this has to look perfectly blended. And then, you know, it's like you're gonna, at some point you should not see like where the pores are starting and the wrinkles are ending. Just like eventually you're gonna get there with that effect. And then let's get some deeper ones in here. And the shape of the direction of the wrinkles is always like this, it's always perpendicular to the direction of the fibers of the muscles, right? So if you have like your orbital in here, everything is a circle like this. That means like the wrinkle's always gonna break around that way, right? Same with the mouth, like it's a circle in here, so the wrinkle's gonna happen around like that, right? So it's gonna break up like that. So especially like those, I observed with some of those Native Americans. By the way, I found this reference here that's kind of cool. It's this actor. He always played like the bad guy, the bad Indian guy, right? And he has like a very interesting face. So I started adding some of his features to my guy, but you know, his nose is much shorter and all that stuff. But he has some very interesting features as well. So I'm incorporating some of that. But yeah, you see like those wrinkles around here. Those wrinkles are very interesting. So like it has like around one right here and the other one on the other side right there, right? So if I look at my references here, the ones I was using for the Native American guys, let's see if I can find it here. Personal projects, Native American man, and then images. For some reason, I closed, actually references. I closed all my references that I had up before. But let's get this guy here, for example. See those wrinkles in there as well? From the sides of the mouth. It's kind of interesting, right? Because it's almost like there's a perma frown in there that's causing those wrinkles. And then I noticed that in a bunch of different guys, like that guy we were sculpting, my main reference, right? That guy as well, you know, it's like those wrinkles right there. And sometimes they're not even that old, you know, it's like, but you get those strong wrinkles around, like this one is a little bit more towards the side, this is a little bit more the bottom of the lips, but a lot of them have the similar kind of wrinkles, you know, around there as well. So very interesting. So I'm gonna be observing some of those guys and trying to incorporate some of those major ones, because right now my guy is still a little too simplistic when it comes like to this area around here. And I think once I start adding more of that stuff in here, I'm gonna get some interesting complexity and probably extend the nasolabial folds much deeper in lower as well. So they're kind of ending around there, but I have like a little bit of a mention of them in there, right? So probably gonna be digging those ones much deeper later. I'm probably gonna do this outside of HD, so just like mark them pretty good asymmetrically, and then go to HD and then just, you know, like really tweak them to look nice in there. So let's do something here since we are at this spot. Let's get out of HD. And since we have the time, let's export this displacement, a new one. Let's do another render test with the new displacement now that we have more stuff covered. So let's go back, same process. So we're gonna go to the subdivision level 2. I'm gonna export it to my personal projects, Native American, source images. So we're gonna export this one. Oh, not source, OBJ, sorry. So this one is gonna be mid-res, so MR2. Oops. 2. And then I'm gonna do the low res, same thing, low res 2. the middle res is just to export to Maya. The low res is just to basically like conform here in ZBrush and get just the difference. So I'm going to delete. So I'm going to do store, switch, import, the lowest. And then let's save my file because just now we're going to save after 2 hours, right? Crazy. Let's do this one. Actually, which one is the latest? Yeah, that's it. Let's do 16. Name doesn't make any sense at this point. It should be like HD Sculpting or something. So let's do this. And then do the same thing. Let's export it. And then meanwhile, we're going to be setting up that whole scene in Maya. And just to have like the micro detail applied to it together. And let's try to increase some of the spec. And actually, let's do better. Let's start with that skin shader from Stan Winston. Just plug the new bump map and then tweak that shader. Just remove the maps we didn't talk about yet. And then you know, at least we're going to have the settings that I'm using exactly for those renders for Stan Winston, which for me is like, in terms of the skin, is the most successful ones I had so far. So I think we're going to be using that as a base. So let's do plugin, displacement, 892, switch morph target. Everything should be saved from yesterday, right? Same settings. Sub D level 2. And let's just export this. Create all maps. Source images. And then you should save with LR2 now instead of LR1. So let's do this. Let's switch to our Maya. And then I think we're going to be right on the dot. Yesterday it took 13 minutes. I thought it would take 8. But let's see if this is going to go faster today. So let's play with skin shader for now. So we know this one is working. We have the macro displacement in there, macro bump. And then we have the displacement assigned. So let's see, our shader network looks like this. All right, it's very simple. It's just like a simple map. So let's bring the Stan Winston skin and let's like clean it up. So this is the AI standard. Let's just rename this one so we know. This is going to be like base shader test, right? So I know it's here. So base shader test. And then I'm going to select that one and then press shift and click on the Stan skin. And then I'm going to go to graph, input and output connections. So now I have both of them in there. The only thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be replacing this node here, the cell noise, which was AI noise in the case of Stan Winston. So I'm going to be replacing that one with this guy here. So the bump value, so let's see the best way to do this. So if I click this guy here, I can just drag the cell noise, like click with the middle mouse and then drop right there. And then I'm gonna plug again. It's gonna be using just the out color red to the bump, where is bump value? Right here. And that's about it. So for the bump depth in here, what I'm using, if you look at this, it's actually a couple of, it's a map, a bunch of maps in here. So if I look at this one here, this is basically like a black and white map, right? Let's see if I can find yeah, this is like the first one. It's actually basically the bump depth that I'm painting is like, I'm gonna show you tomorrow possibly when we are talking about this. Like for the nose, for example, I'm gonna paint like a little bit darker, lips much darker, eyelids darker, and then this is gonna be like this the spots that I want the least amount of bump. So there's, you know, you're gonna be more shiny in those areas. And the ones that I have like more height, so like more white in the map, it's gonna be more diffuse like we were talking about just in the beginning today. But this is what's gonna be controlling, like, you know, it's like modulating the skin to create the macro displacement. But in this case here, we're just going to ignore it for now. And I can actually just remove that altogether. So let's, so we have this one plugged in there, the cell noise. And then let's tweak the rest of the stuff here. So let's remove everything we are not using just yet. So this is the settings for my Stan Winston skin. You can take note or you can actually just pause the video later on. So let's just copy this tab in here so I can actually have it floating so it's easier to see. All right, there. So basically like the base in here is 0, right? Because my subsurface is at 1. And just like we talked about a couple of days ago, this is basically like the diffuse, right? The diffuse channel that's gonna blend with the subsurface if the subsurface is not fully at 1. So if you bring it 0.5, the other 0.5, the other 50% is gonna come from here. But in our case, we're using 100% of subsurface, so I'm not gonna change this. So base, just ignore for now. For the specular, I'm using a height of 0.8, but that's because I'm using a bunch of maps to create the specular for me. So those maps, they look like this for now. We are gonna ignore for now today, right? So just like a very simple airbrushed, very like noisy map for the specular. So I'm gonna just disconnect this for now. We're not gonna be using any specular. So break it, and then I'm gonna just leave it white for the color. And then the values, you're gonna keep the same one. So 0.8, 0.120, and 155 for the index of refraction. For the transmission, I mean, the object is not that, the skin is not transparent, so I'm not gonna be doing anything with it. For the subsurface scattering, there are a couple of things in here. So I'm using random walk 2, right? The anisotropic value here, I'm using 0.15. So I'm adding a little bit more of a front scatter to it. And then for the scale, I'm using 0.120. And this one, you can play with it, you know, it's like you can go, if it's too translucent, sometimes you can play like, put like 110 instead. If it's not translucent enough, you want something a little bit more stylized, look more flashy, you can crank to 130, 140, you know, but don't go much higher than that. For the radius, I'm actually using that same color that's suggested in the manual for Arnold, which is basically this. If I click this one, there's the HSV version of the color scheme. So I'm gonna switch to RGB 0 to 1. And you can see those are exactly the same values suggested in the manual. 1 for R, 0.35 for green, and 0.2 for blue, right? So nothing fancy in the radius, is like a plain color, and that's it. And then for the subsurface color itself, there are a couple of tricks in here. And again, this is going to be talking about only when we are painting the albedo. I don't want to create more confusion right now. There's a lot of information already thrown at you guys. But what I do, I normally plug this shader node in here, which is a remap color. It's not an Arnold node, it's actually a Maya node. And the remap color is pretty cool because you can plug a texture map in here, and you can actually color correct using the red, green, and blue curves. So you can tell that what I'm doing here, for example, I'm right in the middle of it, I'm actually reducing from 0.5 to 0.46. So reducing the redness, not touching the green, and then increasing the blue. So from 0.5, I'm going to 0.54. So the reason I'm doing this color correct in the map is for that thing that I mentioned the other day. You know, it's like when you, let's see how my ZBrush is doing here. It's still working. You know, it's like if you're sculpting, if you're painting a color map and you're basing on photographs to actually get the color, right? Like because you need some visual reference, you're actually painting the subsurface scattering that's being represented in there. There's no way to remove it, right? And then if we could remove the subsurface scattering, and basically like you would be removing like the blood vessels and the fat tissue from underneath the skin, then you would end up like with a very pale kind of skin, right? So what I'm doing with those nodes in here, with this node here, is to actually try to counter that orange that's going to be exaggerated, because if you're adding that color, right, like this peachy color here, to a color that's already the color you're trying to represent from a picture, is going to basically like create like a double effect. And it's going to look very orange, right? So that's why I use this node here in between. That's actually to counter it. And then plugged into the color one here, the color channel, then it's going to be my maps themselves. And you're going to see like they look like this, right? It's kind of like an average kind of color there, a little peachy. But again, if I render the way it is, it would look very, very orange because it's multiplying with this color here, right? But don't worry about it for now, because we're going to be talking in detail when you're actually dealing with this stuff. For now, I'm just going to cut down this the subsurface color. I'm going to remove it completely. And later on, we're going to rebuild this shader network. Don't worry about it. And I'm just going to copy this one, the same value, and you're going to plug in here and just desaturate it. So that one, basically it's the copy now. And I'm going to just desaturate it pretty good, because it's just like for our own test right now. And make it a little bit more orange and more desaturated, something like that. So let's look at the other channels. So we went through specular, no transmission, subsurface. Now we already tweaked it. And then let's go to the coat. So for the coat here, I have the same specular map plugged as a coat for an extra layer of specularity, right? But again, we're not going to be dealing with this right now. Let's just break it. And I'm going to keep it very low for now, because we don't see anything. So just like this is all temporary, just to get some render done today. And roughness, 0.4. So basically kind of broad, right? It's not like shiny. 0.155 for the index of refraction. And then the sheen, I'm using a tiny bit. So this sheen here, it's suggested to use by their Arnold manual. But what this does is basically like is to create the effect of velvet, you know, it's like, or satin. So if you're doing a shader like for clothing and stuff, that's basically how you create that effect that looks like there is a micro fuzz applied to it, right? But because we're going to be using peach fuzz in the face itself, in theory, we don't have to use this one. But, you know, it's like, it adds a little extra layer of complexity to the skin, like a little bit of Fresnel, if you have it. But try to use very, very low. In my case here is 0.030, and the roughness is 0.300. No emission is not a self-illuminated object. No thin film. Geometry, we have our cell noise plugged in there, right, that we just added, the bump. And then that's about it. I mean, I don't have anything else plugged. So that's the skin shader, like the first view of the skin shader we're going to be using. But then obviously we're going to be plugging all those maps as we build them, right? But not now, because it's going to get confusing. I want to see the result as it is. So let's assign this shader to this guy here. Remembering that we're going to have to change our maps. So the maps, let's see how they're doing right now. I guess we have almost everything done. Let's see, source images. Yeah, we have 4 out of 5. So this should be the last one, which is good. So we want to be rendering that guy. And then meanwhile, we're going to have to bring our new model, right? Let's get this one minimized. Let's get, so this one, you see, like in this case here, we already have everything set for this guy, right? We already went to Control A, like to go to the properties of the object, right? And let me just delete history for this guy here. And then we have everything set in here. So if I simply deleted this model at this point here, and then I just brought the new model, I would have to reassign the shader network, and I would have to add all these parameters we just added yesterday. Name this SSS shader. I would have to come with the subdivision levels here. And again, it would have to, you know, it's like reset everything here. Displacement 2, auto bump, everything I would have to set up again, right? But because we already have the model in there, from this point on, and I'm not going to change the topology anymore, every time I bring the model in here is going to be as a blend shape, right? So let's look at the outliner here. And we have this model named Poly Surface 1. So it's like Native American, something like that. And then let's bring the new model that has new forms, right? The new displacement and everything. Let's import it as OBJ. Make sure that you have single object, right? That's you just have to set it up one time. That's basically what we did in the first day. And then let's go to the OBJ folder. And then we're going to get the latest. It's going to be the mid resolution one, right? That's the mid res. Let's make sure they have like the same number of polygons. So I'm going to click this guy here. It shows me 69304. Let's click on this guy, 69304. So what I have to do now, I have to select like the new model first. So select the new model, then select the old model. And then you can just go to animation tab in here. And you can say the form, create blend shape. And then here you can add any name. I'm going to put AAA. And then everything else is basically like everything is off here. So no check topology or blah, blah, blah. So that's basically like, I could name like blend shape if I want to be neat. But I'm going to put AAA because I want to mess up with it. So create. And now what's going to happen, if you click this guy here, now we're going to have this node that's called blend shape AAA. And then if you slide it, it's not going to change that much, just a little bit, right? It's changing just enough to conform to the other one. You can see like stuff like peeking through. So now that I actually morphed into the other one, I have to actually delete the history. Otherwise, this, you know, so if I delete the other one, it's going to go away, right? So if I delete this model here. So what I'm going to do, every time you bring something, there are two ways I use to transfer stuff. Is either using the blend shape, that's the simplest way, or there is also the, in modeling, you can use the mesh transfer attributes, right? In this case here, you can use the topology to transfer over, or you can use the UV space. The topology is more precise, takes longer, but it works just fine. UVs is much faster, but sometimes, you know, there's a little discrepancy, it's gonna look a little weird. But we are using the blend shape, right, at this point. So what I created in here, I have like those two buttons. One is delete construction history on selected object. And the other one is delete the history for all objects. Because we're going to be using XGen, try not to use this one ever. You just remove stuff for the object itself. So in order to find this, you have to go here. So you select your object, which is the Native American one, and you go to Edit, Delete by Type, and then History. So it's Alt-Shift-D, right? And not to be confused with this one here, Delete All by Type History. Right? So it's the first one, delete by type history. This one is just for the selected objects, basically. So I'm going to click this one. And now if I delete this guy here, I don't need it anymore, right? Now I have my Native American with the latest forms in there in place. Let's see if everything is finished. Yeah, 13 minutes again. For some reason, it's a little bit longer than before, but it's okay. And then let's plug our new maps in here, the new displacement map. So I have my Stan Winston in there. Let's just make sure that's all clean. Stan skin. Okay, everything was removed. Everything, you only have plugged just the cell noise. And then let's plug the new displacement here, which is, I already have one plugged. That's the old one from Stan Winston right there. I'm just gonna switch this one to the Native American guy. Right here, source images, and you're gonna pick, you can pick any of them. Number 2, so pick 105 is fine. And then just make sure that the UDIM switches here. So like UDIM, blah, 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 I found 5 tiles. So that's all we need. And it's already raw. So nothing else to do in here. So that should be ready to go. Just to confirm in here, in the attributes, we have everything set. Yeah, shared, Catmull Clark 4. Yeah, we should be good to go. So let's do a little render of this guy here to see if we got some of that detail in there. But before you do that, I think this light in here, we can actually get a little smaller just to get more shininess to it. And then bring a little bit further as well. And get a little bit more spec overall. And now that it's smaller, I'm going to increase the exposure here. Let's try 10. See, something like that. So let's see how that renders. It's gonna load to memory. But yeah, a couple of things I want to incorporate in my guy, for example, like is this bags, you know, like really getting something that's more organic, that shows a little bit more of this transition between the bag and the very strong zygomatic boning here. So something like that I want to incorporate to my guy. You know, so that's the thing. If you're not like concentrating on a single person, it's kind of hard to pick and choose what's your favorite. You know, it's like some of those faces are so amazing. I just want to add all of them, but then you're gonna go like too much towards the same character, right? It's very strong. Like my exposure got too overblown. So let's try 5 here. Less than that. So 7. Still too strong. Jesus. 6. Nope. 6.5. Okay. So just remember that the skin here now, it's very pale, right? It's like the darker skin that I had set before. So let's try to get the skin a little bit darker just to be able to see the pores. Let's select the face again. Just go to the subsurface scattering. And that pale color I just plugged in there, I'm just gonna bring it like to a darker tone around there. And see if we can get anything from like a close-up. Get something like that to show some of those pores. Hopefully you're gonna be able to see it. And we also have all the macro bumps applied in there, right? So it's gonna be a little tricky to see one separate from the other one, but we still have that shader that I created separate that I can actually use just to test the intensity of the macro stuff, right? Yeah, you see, like I'm starting to get the little, tiny little, you know, dots in there in the spec, right? Like because of the micro breakups in between the displacement. So at some point, I'm gonna have to tweak them to make sure that they are actually creating just enough specs, but they're not like, it's not breaking up too much, you know? And you see like all that complexity that I mentioned before, it's kind of gone, right? Like with the, you know, it's like it doesn't look as deep as we had in ZBrush anymore. Another thing that's going to happen here that's kind of deceiving is that sometimes you look at the render like this and it looks quite simple, and then it's because you don't have a couple of things assigned or applied, right? One of them is this, for example, like if I'm using a very low sample rate, like the Arnold render, I'm using 6 only here and 333, right? If I increase this, then you're gonna start seeing less and less of this spec. You're gonna look more and more like plastic, right? So sometimes it's hard to evaluate what you're gonna get in the final render if you're using very low samples like that. So sometimes it's good to actually, you know, crank a little bit, maybe 8. And another thing that you're gonna notice difference is that between the amount of subdivision levels you have here, if you have like 3 in relation to 5, for example, it's a very different result you get. You start getting more and more fine detail as you increase here, obviously, right? So I might try later, for example, like do a render with 5, but normally for all my renders, I keep it around 4, and it normally works fine. I think what we are missing here is actually the light is hitting this guy like straight on. And I think we need a little bit more of a glancing angle to be able to appreciate any displacement. Well, let's try a little bit from the side. Yeah, I can tell like, you know, the lips right now, they're super shiny right there. But let's see if we can get a little bit of the muzzle area here to show some of the detail around, let's see, around there. So let's get a little bit closer. And this is all CPU, by the way, it's not GPU, so that's why it takes a little longer. You still have to set it up to GPU because normally my scenes have like way too much stuff going on and then it ends up like running out of memory for GPU, but I have to figure out how to optimize that. Let's try that. Let's see how it's gonna render around here. It's still super specky in there. It's like very simple so far, but I'm gonna be tweaking the lighting today, and then tomorrow when I show you guys this again, you're probably gonna be seeing a lot more detail in there, and also the depth of the micro displacement here or micro bump. It's a little bit too strong at this point, so it's killing a lot of detail too. So, but yeah, I'm gonna be doing a few tweaks, and then I can show you the adjustments tomorrow, and then we go from there. But yeah. let's keep going with this guy here. Tomorrow we're going to have more sculpting going on. And then possibly jumping into some other maps so you can start combining things and start making this guy a little bit more realistic, right? So the result here, for example, this is what we had yesterday, right? And then just by plugging, you know, this combination of maps and all this stuff, we start getting more of the skin feeling to it, very reddish and everything. And this stuff is all wobbly because of a different model, but you know, like the kind of stuff you're going to be getting, you know, it's like a little bit more realistic reflections and things like that. So that's basically like the goal, you know, in a couple of days, we're going to have something more like that. But yeah, guys, I think that's it for today. We did some good amount of work when it comes to the sculpting part of things. And let's see, just do a little previewing here just to see what we did today. It was a lot around the randomness of the skin and then the eye bags and stuff like that. So this area going to be doing some more cleanup, fill up this with some pores so we can blend them back, and then keep going with the rest. I mean, like, yeah, we did a good chunk of work today. Probably going to be doing some more tonight, like filling up those areas that missing pores and probably like adding more stuff like around the nose, but not doing anything too crazy that we didn't talk about today. So, all right, thanks a lot, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying. And I hope it's not like too overwhelming. You're probably like, oh, that's easy. That's let's do it. So awesome, guys. And another thing, if tomorrow I'm gonna be sending out all the instructions about like the reviews for this weekend. So you should expect like an email with links like to the Google Drive, so you can actually drop your files in there. I'm gonna be putting a note in there, like be careful with the size of the files, right? So if it's again, like if it's for me to review like your fine detail displacement and stuff, I'd rather do with something like this, you know, like a screenshot, and then I can comment about like distance between pores or whatever it is. And then if it's like the model itself, then you don't need to send the model with the HD geometry, like you know, just the same model but without the HD. If you already have HD geometry sculpted in it, you can simply clone your object, because when you clone it, basically like eliminates the HD. So you keep one model with HD, the other one with no HD, and then you can send me that one without it. And then just in case if you want me to poke around your model in real time here, you know, otherwise just send me screenshots and I can just do like paint overs in Photoshop. It's all good too. So thanks a lot, guys, and I see you tomorrow again. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. See you.
Thank you, Miha.
Cheers.
Thanks, dude. Good night.
Cheers.
Bye.